When I was a kid, we didn't have TV in our house. Not because my parents were opposed to TV, but just because we couldn't get any stations. I mean, we lived up in the mountains. This was the 60s, and there was no reception, so we had no TV. We had radio. Maybe one reason I got into radio when I was a teenager as a career for many years. But radio was, limiting, I guess. We could listen during the day to a couple of stations in Bend, which was, 40 miles away, and they didn't come in all that great. And sometimes we get some Portland stations. They didn't come in all that great. At night, we got to listen to a lot of radio because AM radio just got blast through the atmosphere at night. We listened to Blazer games. I remember listening to San Francisco Giants with my brother, who was a big Giants fan. But late at night, I would also get under the covers and have my radio on like I wasn't supposed to, but I had my little earphone in and I'd listen to Wolfman Jack. He would be booming on like a 500,000 watt signal south of the Mexican border, screaming away, playing those great oldies and stuff like that. So, a lot of fun memories. But, we had enough choices, right? There seemed to be plenty to choose from. Fast forward to today, and, the choices for listening just to audio is immense. You got radio, of course. You got streaming music, CDs, records, tapes, podcasts, satellite radio. The list just goes on and on. When it comes to video, YouTube alone has hundreds of millions of things you can choose from. Then you have Netflix, Hulu, Disney, HBO, Showtime, TV stations, cable networks, everything. I know, holy crap, that's a lot of stuff. Hey, this is Tim Patterson. This is Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee for, let me see, it must be the 18th. We're just kind of zooming through May. May 18th is actually a notable anniversary here in the Northwest. It's the anniversary in 1980, so this would be 40 years ago today, that St. Helens blew its top. Mount St. Helens, big deal. All of us that were here back then remember where we were, and I do remember exactly where I was, as a matter of fact, when I heard about it. I had been out for a morning walk, and I went to the park. There's a park here called Bush Park, and I think the only time ever in my life I sat down and did yoga or meditated or something, because I was alone, and I was just kind of I'm just going to relax. Nice sunny morning. And then I got back home, and my phone rang 3 or 4 times. People from the radio station telling me, St. Helens blew its top. We need to get down and report on it. So that's the memory, May 18th. So talking about the media world, though, it's just fracturing like crazy. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be, for instance, in a band in this day and age. No doubt the music industry is going through an upheaval of the likes of which it has never seen, especially not only with the fracturing over the last 10, 20 years or so of the industry, but of how to deal, like so many other industries and businesses, with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I thought it might be worthwhile to catch up on today's show with an old friend, Jay Gilbert, that I've had on the show before. I'll put a link to his original interview, which was a good one, good insight into the music industry. Kind of in the events, but not really. Jay and I go back several decades, and he spent much of that time in the music industry working for major labels and that sort of thing. A few years ago, he and a friend split off, formed their own company. They work with artist management and a few artists. And, I said, how are you guys navigating through this crazy world? And the answer was, surprising. I looked at a couple things. How's his company doing? And then how is the industry in a larger sense doing? And here's that conversation. Jay, I want to thank you for joining me here on Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. Good to see you this morning. I hope you're well and healthy and all of that stuff, and family members and everything.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
I know when we had you on the show, a year and a half ago, and we connected for lunch in early March. Real briefly, first week of March, I was down for a show which didn't happen. It got canceled. I was on the plane there, and that's when things started to really kind of change dramatically. And so we had lunch. It was great, and I thought I'd catch up with you and see your company. You and your partner have a company called Label Logic.
Yep,
it's with artists. So maybe just a recap of what your company does, and then let's talk about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, Label Logic, it's Jeff and I are longtime record company guys. We worked at Universal together for almost 20 years. And about 5, 6 years ago, we decided to strike out on our own because the music industry had changed so much. And we started a label and artist services company called Label Logic. And our clients are mainly artist managers and some artists. And we run labels for them and help them manage their business.
So you're not really managing an artist as much as you are working with their management and labels, things like that. So you're
Yeah.
kind of like a step away from an actual artist, although you do work with a few artists, as you said. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do, but not in a management
Right.
capacity. Management is a whole nother ball game.
Different thing.
One of our friends and longtime clients, Doc McGee, has a really great saying that everyone's a bull rider until you open up the gate. And everybody thinks that they can get into artist management. It's a whole different breed of cat because it's you're a therapist, you are an educator, you are a babysitter, and you're a business person. And there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that people don't necessarily know and don't want to know how that sausage is made. But we work really closely with artist management. We know what their needs are, and it's been a good run so far.
Good, good. So obviously, with the COVID-19, the pandemic, everything has changed. I know here in the trade show world, event world, you're kind of like an offshoot of that in a sense because you do events, or your clients are involved in events. We
Yeah,
have nothing going on right now, and for the
yeah.
foreseeable future, I know that in China, I just saw that they've had a couple of trade shows in the last few weeks. Things are shifting, but here in the States, it's going to be a challenge. What are you guys doing? How are you approaching this? What's kind of your internal conversation?
Well, it's kind of crazy. Our business is actually busier than it was pre-pandemic, and
Hmm,
we wouldn't have thought that.
right.
But my partner and I both work from our homes and have for many years, so we're used to carrying on business from home. But what's happening is this new music business, we like to call it always on. So you don't want to leave a big gap. Like when you and I were growing up, there was a release cycle that could have been 18 months between, albums. And you might not even hear from that artist after, they release the album other than a tour. Well, now you need to continually engage your audience. You need to continually release music and videos and communicate and have that relationship via socials and YouTube with your audience. And that's where Jeff and I come in. We help managers and artists to, we are their label infrastructure in a lot of cases, and we continually help them to communicate with their audience. So this pandemic, at least up until now, has just made our business busier as
Hmm,
more people want to release music. They know a lot of people are at home. They're also doing some really interesting things virtually, right? Of
right.
collaborating with their fans, which is really interesting to
Yeah.
see what they're doing. Like one of our clients has taken it to a whole new level. They're called the Licorice Quartet, and
Okay.
it's Lickerish, which is a totally different word if you
Right.
Google it.
Yep.
Anyway, they're members that used to be in the band Jellyfish and Imperial Drag, and these guys have played with everybody from Sheryl Crow to Slash to Alice Cooper. They're very sought after touring musicians, songwriters, etc. The reason I bring it up is if you go to their website, you'll see that not only do they have CDs and vinyl and T-shirts that you can, that their fans can grab, but they're selling experiences. So
Hmm,
you can do a Skype call with the guys. You can write a song with them. You can have a piano lesson with one of the guys. You can remix one of your songs, or they'll mix one of your songs. And they've really taken it to another level. And I'm really having a lot of fun watching these artists adapt. Like right now, we're doing this conversation via Zoom.
right.
Well, a lot of us hadn't even heard of Zoom, even though they'd been around a while. When this pandemic is over, I get the sense that we're going to have a lot of new weapons in our arsenal, that we can use. And I think artists are going to, yeah, they're going to continue to tour, But now they're going to pepper in some of these other things like, live streaming events and the AMAs or Ask Me Anything, where you ask your fans to submit questions. And, the last thing I'll say on this is that another one of our friends and clients, the Accidentals, have taken this to another level as well. They're doing a daily breather. So every day at noon, they get on a live stream, they light a candle, they take a deep breath with you, they talk about things that they're thankful for, and then they play a song. And I'm telling you, it's helping them grow their audience. It's very genuine. It's not selly at all. So those are just a couple of examples with the Licorice Quartet and the Accidentals, how artists today can kind of, I wouldn't say capitalize on this because that's the wrong word, but to make the best out of a bad situation.
Yeah, the word that kept coming into my mind is intimate. You become much more intimate to your fans, and they get to know you better, and in a sense, you get to know them better as well. A couple of things came to mind that some bigger bands have done. You may have seen the video that the Doobie Brothers did with people all around the world doing Blackwater, kind of starting with Tom Johnson,
So cool.
and all these other people came in. That was great. And then Billy Armstrong of Green Day every Monday morning releases a Monday song, a cover of some vintage, unknown, obscure sort of punk thing that probably inspired him when he was young. And it's great, to see. And on Monday, I think, I'm going to get that thing from Billy this morning.
It's really cool. He did That Thing You Do, and I think he did like a Bangles
great.
tune or something.
Yeah.
Rick Springfield just put out a video, and it's it's kind of a song of hope. It's really cool. But what's really neat about it is he's got like Ellen DeGeneres pops on, and Dozat Saint Marie, and like you see all these different people joining in to sing with him, and those are things that we might not have thought of. And there's the coolest one I think I saw was a band called Tao and the Get Down, Stay Down. That's the name of the band. And I may be butchering the pronunciation. But they were kind of the first to do like a concept video via Zoom. And you just got to Google it and watch it. It's so well done. Where they actually use the windows to their advantage and move throughout the windows. And, these are skills that, we wouldn't have had before. And one of the most compelling things that I saw was it was really surprising. Richard Marx is doing these series of interviews. And he's interviewing some really interesting people. And I watched this one where he was interviewing Paul Stanley from Kiss, and they weren't really talking about their latest music. They were talking about ideology and cooking and just what it's like being in, confinement. And it was strangely the most interesting interview I'd seen with either of them.
Because you see them without their persona on, or without their face, front-facing and public-facing images. It's really interesting. And yes, you do get to know them
they're
better.
Not trying to sell anything.
Right. So let's look at kind of the industry more writ large, I guess. You obviously know a lot of people in the world of records and music and tours and that sort of thing. What are kind of some of the things you're hearing about how this will play out, if they even have a sense of it? What kind of things come to mind?
Well, I have been having a lot of these conversations, and we have a podcast as well, and we had a excuse me, a touring agent on last week, and it was a really interesting and honest conversation that the touring industry is not going to come back as soon as people think it is, according to this gentleman. It could be 2 years, and the reason for that is it's going to slowly come back in a sense. Like at first it might be some venues in some states open. So you're still not doing like a full-on tour. And let's say you have 1,000-seat capacity room. It might only be open for 500 for social distancing. And then you're having less employees working there, and you're selling like half the merch that you would sell and half the concessions. So you're bringing in less revenue, and it's going to take time. And if we do this right, if we're smart, we can get back to that new normal eventually. And hopefully we don't rush back too soon and delay it even further. But I tend to agree with that. I think that this is going to get back to where we were, let's say pre-pandemic, I think it's going to be a couple of years or more. I don't think it's going to happen in, I know some folks are saying, well, we're going to keep this tour booked, and I think they're going to end up canceling it and not postponing it. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope summer comes and we come up with a vaccine or some kind of preventative medicine for this thing. But if you take a band like Kiss, they're not going to tour until there's some kind of vaccine for it. And then you've got all the meet and greets, right? Yeah. That are probably not going to happen unless they're between panes of glass.
And a concert is such an intimate thing. I mean, you may have seen the article that Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters wrote just recently when he talked about how great it was to be up on stage and how important it is to not only himself but the audience and the band and everyone. Just it's such a thing, and the audience is necessary. I mean, you could probably play a baseball game without an audience. It'd be harder to play like an NBA game without an audience because you feed, those players feed off the audience. But
absolutely,
you can't do a concert really without the audience. Not some of those. I mean, you could not imagine a Foo Fighters concert without 10, 15,000 people at least.
A different experience, right?
It wouldn't make any sense. Yeah. So you're right. I think it will take a long time until we get to the point where everyone is comfortable. And they may open things up. They may say, hey, some governor of some state may say, we're fine here. We're just going to open things up. But if the people that would be attending that are thinking to themselves, I'm not quite ready, then it's not going to happen. So it's just because someone in authority says it's okay, people, if they're not ready to go, it's not going to happen. So.
I think you're absolutely right. And right now there's, there may be a state or two that's starting to open up, but the public doesn't feel safe yet. And you can't really book a national tour with two states,
No.
So.
Or one state here and one state here, right? One over there. And especially with half, it just doesn't pencil out with half the audience.
No, and it's heartbreaking for me because you and I both know a lot of people who make their living, whether it's with trade shows or being on the road crew or lighting or shipping. All these people are hardworking, great people that they're getting hit the hardest with this thing because some of these artists, and most of these artists, can still put out music and videos and continue to generate revenue and grow their base. But man, if you're putting together the trade shows for these folks, and if there's no trade show, you got to find something else. And unemployment is, obviously ridiculously high, and there's not a lot of opportunities out there. Yeah. It's just a heartbreaking situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, and it's going to take a while to work through it. Jay, I really appreciate you spending time. I just wanted to kind of get your take on your company and the music world as it currently exists, and when we might get out of this. So thanks again for taking time. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And thanks again to Jay Gilbert of Label Logic for shedding some light on what their company is doing, as well as what some of the industry folks are doing in the midst of the pandemic. No one knows when it will let up, and as they say, he says they're looking not another year, but maybe another 2 years before things return to normal. And yes, I'm using air quotes. This week's one good thing, my wife and I just finished watching a mini series on, I think it was HBO, called Chernobyl. I think it was 6 parts, 5 or 6 1-hour episodes on what happened in April of 1986 in Russia, in Ukraine, up in Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR at the time. And the meltdown and the explosion at Chernobyl. It's fascinating and an interesting look inside the political culture as well, as they tried to cover it up and everything. But great acting, great story. I would highly recommend it. That's this week's one good thing, Chernobyl, on HBO. That does it for this week's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. Check us out at TradeshowGuy.net. There's a lot there for you, including, of course, the latest podcasts. And there's a couple of books you can buy. There's also you can get free chapters. I think you can actually get a download of one of the books on a PDF if you opt into the newsletter. And some other freebies as well there. It's all at TradeshowGuy.net. Right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. See you next time around.